What if Africa was never colonized? The conquest of Africa was as a result of the European process to reach all continents of the world. In the late 19th century, only about 10% of the continent was under the control of the Europeans, but it quickly graduated to about 90% by the end of the early 20th century. The Europeans were simply interested in what Africa had to offer in terms of labor and resources. They also had political and religious reasons, and this scramble definitely had a big impact on Africa of today. There's always that desire to know if Africa would have turned out different if the influence of the Europeans were factored out. So, what if Africa was never colonized? Before we go into the what if, let's take a look at what really led to the revival of colonialism. Africa, before then, remained uncolonized save for the French in Algeria, Portuguese traders, and a sprinkle of British and Dutch in the south of Africa. The major reasons that kick-started the process of colonization was the Great Depression and the rivalry among Western European powers. The tragic economic recession in the history of the Western world from 1873 running through 1896 was described as the first truly international crisis. Many influential countries were hit really bad, and this provoked different responses to the economic collapse. The Long Depression contributed to the colonization agenda, which led to the partition of Africa as a result of the need for market expansion by the Western world. The Europeans were rapidly expanding across the globe in 1870, and these raised the need for new markets. The rivalry among Britain, Italy, Germany, France, and the other Western European countries also played a large part in colonization. Leopold II of Belgium sparked a global conflict after claiming Congo for his personal reasons, and this led to more land acquisition by Europeans as a result of the rivalry. The conflict was soon put out by a formal meeting of European powers in Berlin to discuss just how the continent was to be split up. After decades of colonialism with wars in between, nationalists finally won the fight to regain control over the continent, but a lot of damage had already been done. One of which was the uneven division of Africa by the arbitrary borders drawn by the Europeans for their personal reasons of marking territory without any consideration for the native demographics. This resulted in irregular grouping of dissimilar people into one nation and division of people who looked alike into different nations. The scale of Africa being colonized by the European tilts upward, but assuming the continent was never stirred up by colonization, what would life in Africa look like? Would it be an ambitious continent without the chaos brought by Europe? Or would it be backwards with no substantial improvement? Well, the answers aren't quite clear-cut, but here are a few different possibilities on how the continent would have turned out. Number 1. Regional groupings. Africa may be resource-rich, but not all regions are booming with resources. There is a possibility of certain regions like Southern and Western Africa dominating the continent. There is also the factor of lack of education and industrialization in Africa, which will definitely determine just what is done with the natural resources the continent has been blessed with. Africans may not be able to transform the resources into something worth exporting except they adopt European practices along the way, which raises even more questions. How would the products be processed? How will they be exported to other continents without possession of adequate infrastructure? Would Europe be willing to engage in fair trade of products from Africa? Number 2. Unbalanced scale of Africa. Africa would most likely be able to trade its resources to other continents as equals and possibly make the most money off of it, but there's no saying that all countries in Africa would benefit from this trade. Considering the fact that the continent without colonization isn't sure to practice socialism, there is likely not to be a fair distribution to lesser countries. This could lead to domination by certain economically capable and stable regions over lesser regions, which will eventually draw up an unbalanced scale of living in the continent. Number 3. Religion would be present but different. Christianity probably wouldn't have eaten deep into the roots of Africa and would have been the minority religion if at all it was recognized on the continent. Critics of colonialism targeted Christianity, claiming the colonialists supposedly used the religion to cover up their selfish personal agenda. Missionaries were first viewed as righteous saints and devout martyrs, but this view took a complete 360 turn by the middle of the 20th century during the era of anti-colonialism, where they were now regarded as arrogant and greedy imperialists. Traditional religion and Islam would, without any doubt, be the dominant religious practices in Africa. Number 4. Technology. The idea of technology could be either of two ways: advanced or behind. It could be more advanced, but this is not certain, considering the idea of applied science is mainly an European one. Africa could perchance have adopted European technology not by buying their high-tech products, but rather learning how to make theirs, and this is a large possibility considering the laborious skills of the people. Number 5. Racism would be alien to Africa. Racism wouldn't be an issue. The conditions that birthed racial discrimination would not be present in Africa if it was never colonized. Africans would never have been taken for slaves, and there would never have been the issue of a marginalized race. The continent would be able to hold its own amongst other continents as equals, but there would most likely be issues of internal discrimination based on the imbalance of regions in Africa. Number 6. Dispute over borders. The Europeans may have done the continent a favor when it comes to settling the issues of ill-defined border lines, even though it had led to the improper division of African natives. The Europeans during the colonial era mapped out their areas of influence across borders in each region with myths, border lines. Supposing these lines were not properly defined, the story would be different. The maps would have a different outline than the present one, and there would be real border disputes among African regions, which may even result into full-blown wars as seen in some parts of Asia. That's it for today's video. Give it a big thumbs up and drop a comment down below. If you enjoyed this video, then you'd probably be interested in this one. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on your post notifications to be notified whenever we post a brand new video.